From the capital city of Charleston, West Virginia, this is Inside West Virginia Politics with Mark Curtis. Inside West Virginia Politics is brought to you by AARP West Virginia, your ally for real possibilities in the Mountain State.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Inside West Virginia Politics. I'm your host, Mark Curtis. We're going to be talking about a lot of politics, national and state stuff this week with Senator Shelley Moore Capito, Republican of West Virginia. Great to have you on the program again.
Always good to be here.
You've had a busy week, as have I. We've had impeachment, State of the Union, all kinds of other stuff. So let's just start there. You voted to acquit President Trump on both articles of impeachment. He was acquitted by the Senate. Why did you cast your vote the way you did?
Well, for a couple of reasons. I think that both counts, fell way short of a high crime and misdemeanor. I think that also to vote to remove a president from office, not just the 2016 election would be nullified, but also the ability for President Trump to be on the ballot in 2020. So we're basically changing the face of two elections. I listened very carefully. I pledged to be objective and fair, and I was. And it was a long list of listening, but I really think that the partisanship that was shown by the House of Representatives, the very thin case that they brought, very incomplete, there's no way the president should be removed from office on the basis of what I heard. Yeah,
and the vote was pretty much along party lines. The only person to deviate was Mitt Romney on one count where he voted, the Republican of Utah, to remove the president from office. But the Democratic caucus stuck together, and 99.9% of the Republicans stuck together too. So you get the sense that this really was a politicized thing more than anything.
Very politicized, yes.
Well,
and divisive.
Yeah, and does a lot get? I mean, I covered Bill Clinton's impeachment from gavel to gavel, from beginning to end, and I can't remember anything else that got done in Washington in that year.
We didn't do anything else. We really weren't permitted to do anything else. That's the rules of impeachment, and so we've been basically on hold pretty much since the middle of December, because remember, they held the articles of impeachment for 33 days. It was supposed to be urgent, yet Speaker Pelosi holds it for 33 days, which we could never figure that out. But it's been very frustrating for a lot of people, and most of all those of us who want to do good things for the state and the nation.
Well, let's talk about some of the other things. Obviously, another big event this week was the State of the Union address. Your thoughts on it? I'll share mine in a second, but your thoughts on it? I
thought the president did a very good job. He's been criticized for talking about a better economy, more people working, more minorities working, wages going up, two massive trade deals, some criminal justice reforms. He sort of reviewed the year and all of the things that we've done, creation of opportunity zones and other things. And people going, oh, he's bragging. I mean, I've sat through probably 19 or 20 State of the Unions. Every president says what we've done right. Why can't we celebrate what's going right? And then he laid out, probably not as specifically as I would have liked, but he did lay out what he wants to do in the future.
I was, and I've been to a number of State of the Union addresses and covered many of them, and I write a national column on patch.com every week, and one of the paragraphs I wrote this week was junior high comes to the nation's capital. And say what you want, but the president ignored Nancy Pelosi's extension of her hand for a handshake, and then at the end of the speech, she tore up the speech. And when you hear people talk about the need for bipartisan behavior and cooperation and working together, a lot of people look at this and say it was just juvenile.
It was juvenile. It was disrespectful to the president to tear it up. I don't think it was an unplanned event. I think somebody or she had decided to do that, and quite frankly, it was out of character for Speaker Pelosi. I mean, I know her pretty well.
Oh, I do too,
and I just found it to be very, very rude.
Okay. Well, one of the things we want to talk about, a very serious issue getting out of the politics, is what's going on up at the VA in Clarksburg. We all learned last week that a grand jury has now been seated. I know you and Senator Manchin, our whole congressional delegation, has been horribly frustrated by this investigation that's gone on better than a year and a half now. We have 11 dead veterans, and somebody's responsible, but nobody's been charged yet.
It's very, very heartbreaking when you hear the stories and more information coming out. And I've talked with the U.S. Attorney more than a few times, expressing my frustrations with the timing, and he's expressed that frustration himself. But he's waiting for the FBI and for the OIG of the VA to give him complete information before he can bring charges. But for the life of me, I'm like you and everybody else. what is taking so long? And I think Senator Manchin and I have joined together with legislation to ask for more accountability, to find out what went wrong, what are your medical protocols, why was this not discovered earlier, when was it first discovered, to really bring it all out. But until the investigation comes to a close, I think we're a bit hamstringed as to how much public information can come forward, because you don't want to harm the case. You want to make sure when you bring the case, it's locked down solid. And I think that's where we're going to end up. I just am frustrated it's taken so long. And I've talked to the VA and the OIG and everybody else about this.
All right, well, we're going to keep on it, because our veterans, anybody that serves this country in uniform, deserves a lot better than that. We promise we're going to keep on our part of the investigation and watching it and talking to our senators and congressional delegation.
Thank you.
Shelley Moore Capito, Republican Senator from West Virginia.
Nice to see you.
Great to see you again, too.
Thanks.
We'll have more of Inside West Virginia Politics after this break.
Now back to Inside West Virginia Politics with Mark Curtis.
That causes concern to me. He can say all he wants, oh, there's been these audits done. Well, let's see the audits. Let's see how it really works, what happens to a voter's personal information, how is it really authenticated, and how is the process really done.
And welcome back this weekend to Inside West Virginia Politics. We're going to shift gears and talk about election security. Joining me right now is Secretary of State for the state of West Virginia, Republican Mac Warner. Great to have you on the program.
Good to be here. Thanks, Mark.
It's going to be a busy year for you. It has been in your office already with all the filings and stuff. Look, the reason we're having this discussion is because of the meltdown they had in Iowa this week, counting the caucus votes. We'll get to that in a second. But first of all, we've had some changes this week. The governor signed a law. Who can vote by cell phone? I'm just going to hold up my prop here. Who in West Virginia can vote via cell phone, and why?
Well, we've had the military and overseas citizens that have been able to vote using that device in both the primary and general in 2018. This week, this is a great week for the people of West Virginia, because we're extending the franchise, giving the ability to vote to voters with disabilities. And so these are people who physically couldn't make it to the polls or perhaps even to their mailbox, people who have been disenfranchised because of that limitation. And so we're extending it to get them the ballot digitally, so we can do the electronic transfer of the ballot and have them do it with a marking device that they can use, that they're already using to overcome or to compensate for the disability, and perhaps even return it electronically. And if so, that would be by the cell phone. So those are all the options that are out there. The legislature unanimously passed this, so there was no dissent, no amendments. This is a bipartisan thing. Everybody recognizes that just like we give that ability to vote to the soldiers, we're giving it to people with disabilities as well.
Nonetheless, you know, especially after what happened in Florida 20 years ago, it's hard to believe the hanging Chad mess, and more, you know, contemporaneously in Iowa this week. Now, we should point out, people in Iowa did not vote via cell phone. It was the precinct captains, and we should also point out the parties ran this, not the Secretary of State in Iowa. But anyway, the precinct captains were supposed to take the vote totals from their caucus and electronically transmit it to the party headquarters via cell phone, and it was a disaster.
Well, that's an important distinction. The voting was not impaired, okay, and that's what I want everybody to understand. Think of an election in three parts: the registration part of that, then an air gap, then the actual voting, and then another air gap, and then the reporting. So what we're talking about here with the disability and military voters is the actual voting, and it's not impacted, okay, with what happened in Iowa. Iowa, it was the reporting. So the votes were secure, the votes came in, but when they tried to use the app to report those, then that's where the failure came in. And so it was done by volunteers, so it wasn't a professional, it wasn't the Secretary of State. Okay, these were party volunteers who had not been trained and had not practiced the use of that app, and that's why the failure in Iowa.
Nonetheless, I mean, the public gets skittish about this because we had attempts to hack into the 2016 election from foreign governments and other things, and meddling in other ways on social media and so forth. So the public's confidence is a little undermined. Your opponent, Natalie Tennant, who was in office for 8 years before you defeated her, she has been openly critical of you this week, saying you haven't been transparent enough, you haven't assured the public enough about the security of our cell phone system. Respond.
Well, first of all, the first chance I had to vote using the internet, okay, was in her administration back in 2010, 2012. There was actually a pilot program. So this isn't a partisan thing, okay? This is using technology. See, technology is helping overcome the disenfranchisement. A soldier on a hillside in Afghanistan doesn't have access to a printer, doesn't have access to the mail. And when we have people like a good family friend of ours, Jake Fritz, who was killed by Soleimani, and he's out there defending freedom, who should have the right to vote more than him? We need to get the soldiers. Only 13% of our soldiers get their votes counted. That's why we're using technology to overcome that. And I would make the analogy to the disabled community, that they have just as much right, or more so, to participate in our democracy, and that's why I'm using technology to overcome it. So it's a risk-reward benefit. The risk is very small. Not one vote was changed anywhere in America by the Russians or anybody else. Not one machine was hacked, okay? So get away from the hysteria of that. So the risk is extremely small, and the reward is huge.
We got 30 seconds left. Assure the people in West Virginia this is a safe and secure system that your office is using.
Absolutely, and it's for that limited purpose, for these specific demographics. I'm not advocating this for everybody's use. I'm using it for those people who have been disenfranchised and enlarging that now, and I think we've done that with bipartisan support. The House, the Senate, and the governor, and the disabled community has come out in droves to support this. I think it's a good day for West Virginia.
All right, we'll mention the West Virginia primary is Tuesday, May 12th. If you are have a loved one serving overseas in the military or someone in your family who is disabled and wishes to vote this week, you can vote this way. Contact Secretary of State Mac Warner's office. Great to have you on the program. Look forward to working with you this election season.
Good to be with you. Thank you.
You're very welcome. We'll have more of Inside West Virginia Politics after this break.
Now back to Inside West Virginia Politics with Mark Curtis.
And welcome back to Inside West Virginia Politics. We want to talk campaign 2020 right now. I want to introduce Dr. Matt Hahn. He's a Republican running for the 2nd congressional seat here in West Virginia, currently occupied by Congressman Alex Mooney. Good to have you on the program.
Good morning.
First of all, you're from where?
I am from Berkeley Springs, West Virginia. I've lived there for 20 years.
This is an interesting congressional seat because it runs from Jackson County on the Ohio River all the way over to Jefferson County on the Potomac River. It's a very long, narrow district, and Congressman Mooney's from your end of the state, too. Talk about why you're running against him and what you see as the central issue of your campaign.
Well, I'm a family physician, and every day my patients tell me healthcare horror stories all day long. And how devastating they are to their lives, how they can't afford their care, how people are trading medicine versus food, and certainly, health care versus their lives. And all day long also they tell me that they are tired of the fighting in Washington, D.C., and that nothing is getting done. And I am just so frustrated by all of this, I decided I had to run.
Let's talk about Congressman Mooney for a second. He's been on the show recently. We'll have him back as we get closer to the primary. But he is one of many Republicans who tried to repeal Obamacare in the House and in the Senate. Do you favor repeal of that, or is that a bill that just needs to be fixed somehow?
Well, I've actually written a book about health care reform, and I think for the most part, our conversations about health care miss the point a great deal. I don't think that Obamacare fixed health care in the United States, and I think that there's a very different conversation that needs to happen. The first thing that has to happen is we need to take costs more seriously. Right now, we spend 18% of our gross domestic product on health care, which is far too much. And if we want to bring health care to everybody in this country, we have to reduce what we're spending currently by a great deal. And I have a lot of ideas about that.
All right, well, let's talk about one in particular, because everybody right now, Democrats and Republicans, talk about lowering the price of prescription drugs. How do we do that? How would you do that?
Well, first of all, before we get to that, we need to talk about the demand for prescription drugs. The number one driver of spending in healthcare today is preventable chronic disease. I'm a family physician, and I take care of people all day with high blood pressure and high cholesterol and heart disease and diabetes. So number one, we need to take better care of ourselves. We actually need to make taking care of ourselves part of our patriotic duty. That's how we drive lowering expenditures. But in terms of lowering costs on drugs, I think that it's time that we have the federal government negotiating with pharmaceutical companies.
Particularly with Medicare, you hear the AARP of this state is lobbying for that, as are a lot of other folks that represent older Americans trying to get the prescription drugs especially down in price for seniors.
Yes, and I was talking to an elderly couple yesterday, and they were talking to me about how people they knew were having trouble affording their insulin. And, you know, it's really heartbreaking what happens when we're not treating people's diabetes.
Yeah, I hear those stories all the time, people making choices. Do I buy food or do I buy my medicines, especially among our seniors? Let's, first of all, tell us the name of your book and a website folks can find more about you.
So my website, my campaign website is Matt, M-A-T-T-Hahn, H-A-H-N, for F-O-R, Congress. So MattHahn4Congress.com. My book is Distracted: How Regulations Are Destroying the Practice of Medicine and Preventing True Healthcare Reform.
We probably got just a minute left, but tell us some other issues you're really passionate about beyond healthcare and medicine.
Sure. Well, I think the #1 issue in America today is division. We are at one another's throats. We are gridlocked morally and politically, and it's become a really dangerous situation. We are not doing things anymore in this country. We were once a nation that could do anything, and we've become a nation that gets nothing done. And we need to work on that. We need to stop dividing every important issue into two sides that just fight with one another, because it's why we don't fix healthcare. It's why we don't do anything anymore. And we need to learn to look at issues in ways that uphold our values, but enable us to work together and get things done. I hate to see how divided we've become, how one political party won't speak to another political party. We're all Americans, and I know this as I see patients in my office. I don't distinguish between political parties or how someone feels about abortion or guns. I take care of everyone, and when we get to know one another as human beings, all sorts of amazing things can happen. That's what we need to get to.
All right, he's Dr. Matt Hahn. He's a Republican running in the 2nd Congressional District in the primary against Congressman Alex Mooney. Pleasure talking to you. Great to have you on the show, and best of luck on the campaign trail with you.
Thanks very much.
You are welcome, and we will have more of Inside West Virginia Politics after this break. Don't go away.
Now back to Inside West Virginia Politics with Mark Curtis.
And welcome back to our final segment this weekend in Inside West Virginia Politics. It's been a while, so it's time to check in with U.S. Attorney Mike Stewart, who is with the Southern District of West Virginia. Great to have you on the program again,
Great.
Mike.
Thanks for having me.
Good. Hey, listen, we've had a lot of discussion, you know, focus on impeachment and other things going on, and some of the things get lost in the weeds of Washington, D.C. There was a concern you raised with me about fentanyl analogs. What is that, and why was it such a big deal?
Well, first I want to thank our congressman. They actually got the job done, and they do a tremendous job at bringing resources into West Virginia that allow law enforcement to do what we're doing, which is winning the war against the drug scourge, the opiate scourge. That fentanyl analog bill, had it not been passed by Congress, and I know we were in the midst of a really big national event there, had it not passed on February 6th, fentanyl analogs would have been illegal, and on February 7th, they would have been legal. And here in West Virginia, what a tremendous challenge, because if you look at overdose deaths in West Virginia, over half are related to fentanyl.
What is fentanyl? Is it like an artificial or a synthetic heroin? Is that a good description? Or
well, it's definitely used for medical purposes, but it's a diverted drug that's used by drug dealers quite often, but incredibly deadly. And so when you look at the number of heroin deaths, usually fentanyl is mixed in. And everybody seems to be bringing in fentanyl. It seems to be originating out of China, coming through Mexico here into the United States. It's become a real challenge for us to try to keep these things off the streets. But I just want to thank Congress for the good work they did in making sure that bill got passed, and we can continue our fight against those fentanyl dealers.
How much are we seeing it on the street here? You issue a lot of press releases about arrests and big crackdowns and busts. How often are we seeing fentanyl in the mix now in West Virginia?
Fentanyl's in the mix a great deal. We still have drug dealers coming from Detroit, from Akron, from Columbus, from Dayton. All of those drug dealers pretty much got their resources from Mexico. It's just a fact, or from China as an original sourcer. But every week we prosecute drug dealers like you won't believe. But I'll say this, the numbers are improving. But our federal, state, local partners have never worked harder together in partnership. We're focused. We've got the resources we need. We'd always love more resources. Who from the government wouldn't tell you they want more resources? And but things are going well, and we're making great improvement.
Let's talk a little bit more about fentanyl, because my understanding of it, and neither of us are medical professionals, my understanding of it is a tiny, tiny bit can be absolutely lethal. And so to people out there that are thinking of using it or thinking of selling it, well, what's the warning?
Well, here, I'll say this. I take every case that's related to fentanyl. There's not one. Typically in the federal government, a U.S. attorney has certain thresholds with respect to a drug. Take a penny a penny, a dot on that penny of fentanyl is enough to kill someone. And so, in fact, I've got a fentanyl death calculator on my computer. So when we arrest these guys, I want to know the damage that they could cause. And I'll tell you, last year, we arrested folks that could have killed more than 11 million people in the state of West Virginia. Completely unacceptable. These folks who are selling fentanyl that say, oh, geez, I just thought I was selling heroin. I got to tell you, we take it tough. We're tough on drug dealers. We're going to continue to be tough on drug dealers, and most of these folks are from out of state, but I think we're being successful at driving them out.
I want you to address something going on at the state level, and you and I have had this conversation many times. And of course, medicinal marijuana has been approved in West Virginia. It's still not on the market because of some other glitches, but now there's talk in the legislature of legalizing recreational marijuana in the Mountain State. What are your concerns?
If we go down this path, one, we need to accept the fact this is not the be-all, end-all to building a better West Virginia economy. We need to do this comprehensively. We need to be smart about it. But there is no magical bullet out there that's going to make our economy incredible. Two, we need to understand there are adverse consequences from this. Motor vehicle accidents, auto insurance rates go up. Edibles that are unlimited in terms of their scope and variety, from Keurig cups to candies. You go right down the line of enforcement, law enforcement role here, of regulating this. It's a whole host of issues. We need to know what we're getting into before we go down this route. I think folks out there, when I'm out there talking with people, they don't bring up marijuana. It's not their top priority. They're not waiting for marijuana to be legalized. I'll follow what policymakers do, but I think we need to be smart about the way we build West Virginia.
All right, we're going to continue following the progress or lack of progress of the bills down at the legislature. It's a busy place this time of year. We want to thank U.S. Attorney Mike Stewart from the Southern District of West Virginia for being here. And remember, we're a podcast now, so download Inside West Virginia Politics on your favorite podcast location, and we'll see you back here next week.